South Africa is set to host the 60th International Art Exhibition Biennale di Venezia from the 20th to the 24th of November. Now, this exhibition tackles decades-long aspects of the country's past and the current reality, and it's set against the backdrop of a history of forced migration and land dispossession in the country. Now, this exhibition explores the possibilities of personal and communal repair. Artist and writer Percy Mabandu joins me now to chat more about the exhibition, especially before you travel to attend this particular exhibition. Firstly, speak to us, Percy, about how you perceive the role of art in really addressing complex issues like forced migration and land dispossession, from what we've said in the intro.
Thanks for having me. So the exhibition is curated by Percy Mabandu, and it features the work of Major Look. So Percy, as a curator, came up with this theme, Quiet Ground, which looks at the issues that you've just outlined now, land dispossession, displacement, and it's working within the broader theme of the pavilion, which is foreigners everywhere. But she's articulating the South African pavilion's theme in this larger context. We have, as you know, a long history that wrestles with ideas of dispossession, and land. Land is one of the most divisive conversations in South Africa. So what the exhibition aims to do is to try and find a way in which we could craft a language that allows us to find personal and communal repair, to find a space of quiet where we can converse about ways in which we can learn, as Major Look's work, Dinukana, tries to tease out from the land as a classroom, the ways in which the ancient ones traditionally, have had a unique, Africans have had a unique relationship with land that can allow us to learn from indigenous knowledge systems in the contemporary, politics, to say, how can we find repair? How can we find healing? How can we move the conversation to a place where it allows us to see a larger picture that moves us towards, as I say, a space of personal and communal repair. And it's exactly that. But at the heart of it is the idea that we have a history of a relationship with the land that is much more beautiful, that is much more productive, that's much more progressive. People like the Bakoni in the north, who are whose story and their relationship and their ways of using the land is very much the center of the exhibition, is invoked in the work to give us insights on how is it that they have always found throughout millennia of being displaced by intertribal war, if you want to call it that, or moving because of drought, or moving because of internal strife in the communities, to say how have they moved and then found ways in which when they reach a new place, they're able to regenerate themselves, to repair themselves. So those knowledge systems is what a Major Look through their work are trying to tease out for us in the contemporary, dealing with this bad history of colonial dispossession of land.
Percy, you've got a background in as a curator and even as an arts lecturer as well. With this in mind, how do you foresee South Africa's Pavilion's exhibition really resonating with the overarching theme of foreigners everywhere at the 60th Biennial?
Right. So, Percy Mabandu, who's the curator, what she has done is that she's looked at the unique ways in which the ideas of forced migration and ideas of being a foreigner at home can help us to tell that local story in the global context, which is what the main pavilion is dealing with, foreigners everywhere. So she then tries to say, how does the experiences that are unique to the South African context resonate with other issues globally, and that's exactly the kind of tension that she manages to create quite creatively. And because she's a teacher, she's a writer, so she. But I found that her idea or the theme that she's crafted with Quiet Ground, she tells a story where. She says, for instance, when we've had a moment of toy, when we've had a moment of protest, there's this moment after the upheaval where things settle down. And in that moment, everybody has this kind of sense of reflection of what is possible that is positive. And how do we deal with this moment of violence in a way that is useful for building a much more repaired future. So in that way, I think this exhibition that South Africa is presenting in the South African Pavilion in Venice will be able to allow us to speak to larger issues. I mean, there's the issue in Palestine, there's the issue in the Congo, issues of displacement there. And we know that the South African, state is taking a particularly progressive position geopolitically. So what the art exhibition manages to do is to give art a voice in that space, to say there are other ways in which these conversations can be had that is much more calmer, quieter, but just as progressive and bold.
So as the pavilion showcases South Africa on this international platform in Venice, give us your insights about other layers to this particular pavilion. There will be walkabouts and panel discussions also happening there. What are some of the themes that are going to be addressed there?
So the 60th Biennale takes place from the 20th of April all the way until November. So this week is going to be charged. Different countries are going to be opening their pavilions too, and South Africa is going to be hosting, a number of activities in our pavilion. And what ends up happening is that at the end of this week, what we move towards is activations, on a regular basis for people who've managed to go into Venice. But if you go into our social media page, which is, SA Pavilion, you'll be able to see all the other things that are happening in the pavilion. And I think it's great. What's fascinating, Nhlanhla, about this year is that not only is South Africa represented with the pavilion exhibition, is that there are 13 other historic, contemporary and modern South African artists which have been curated into the main exhibition of the pavilion. Beyond beyond the pavilion, the Biennale has also found a way in which they include voices from South Africa, and these speak to the unique way in which South African art history and South African artists have managed to converse with the world in a more progressive, way than we realize.
When one considers the historical and cultural context of South Africa, how does this theme, the Quiet Ground exhibition, then contribute to ongoing conversations when thinking about themes around identity, belonging, and even restitution as well? Yeah,
think about this idea that I think it was Mamdani, I stand to be corrected, who referred to South Africa as the quiet, as the noisy republic, right? So that talk radio news is probably the most consumed media item in the country, precisely because South Africans have a charged way in which we approach debate. So to call for a moment of quiet is to call for a particular kind of reflection on the issues that often divide us. To say that we can have these issues, we can have these conversations, but there's a way in which, after moments of quarrel, after moments of protest, all of us, move into spaces of quiet. The dust settles and the noise sort of dissipates, and we hear each other better. So by using that quiet as a metaphor for a larger space of a larger safe space for communal conversation, or even personal meditation on the issues that are of importance for the nation and by extension the continent and the world, the exhibition is able to perhaps tease us, seduce us into a space that is productively useful for us, as a conversation. And art is at the heart of it, precisely because art also deals with ideas of beauty. It's also fun, right? It's not only cerebral, but it's also emotive. It's something that you enjoy, so there's a playfulness there. So by unlocking a conversation in that way, you're able to move us through the difficult points of conversation in a way that's perhaps less contentious than a political conversation. Of course. Right,
But with the Biennale itself, how big of an event is this? And considering the context that you've just given us, how does it then foster this, call it cross-cultural dialogue and understanding between people of the world?
Yeah, so a majority of countries from all over the world are converging in the city of Venice.
Okay.
You know, all the way, you know, Brazil, the main curator is from Brazil. You know, the US, you know, countries from across Europe, countries, you know, from across the continent are having a pavilion in the Biennale. So this convergence allows at least, you know, stakeholders from different art ecologies to have a conversation.
Yeah.
But because, you know, it functions almost, somebody used this metaphor, that, you know, the Biennale, which is the 60th this year, is really like the Olympics of the visual arts, right? Yeah. And that means that you have this rare opportunity to bring different cultures into the same context. It happens in Italy. So, you know, Her Excellency Ms. Josile, who's our ambassador to Italy, is the commissioner who's going to be hosting us as a country and therefore facilitating interesting conversations between us and other, you know, pavilions from across the world in this space. So we're able to then learn from each other. We're able to then take the juice from those conversations back with us. And, you know, thanks to social media, as I said, if you follow us on social media, you'll be able to have insight and participate in those conversations from the comfort of home. That means you are, by that stroke, participating in a global conversation about the importance of art, the place of South Africa in it, and the ways in which artworks are able to allow us to have conversations about the more serious things in a more creative, more beautiful, and reparative way.
Well, Percy, we have run out of time, but on a personal note, when looking at what's to come, especially with what we're going to showcase at this pavilion, what do you want people who are going to get the opportunity to see this, what do you want them to take away from the experience? Well,
there's a number of things, except the idea that South Africa is producing world-class artists and world-class curators like Portia Malachi and, you know, Mulimo Muilwa and Narimkoto who make up Major Look. South Africa is having really, really productive conversations with the rest of the world on par. And that means that we have a very important role to play globally in the world of art. But also our stories, indigenous stories, as is used by Major Look in their work, is able to teach the world, you know, about interesting ways in which to deal with very serious issues. You know, Bakoni, through this work, Dinokana, which is being showcased, are going to have center space, you know, in the conversation, and therefore it means a small nation, you know, of people in South Africa, their heritage becomes alive on a global stage, and that is part of the magic of what art is able to allow us to unlock.
Well, Percy, my brother, thank you so much for joining us in studio. That's our guest, Percy Mabandu, speaking to us about the 2024 South African Pavilion at the 60th International Art Exhibition, Venice. That's the Biennale that's set to take place soon.